Hello everybody, I'm Thomas from the Babylon.js team, and today we're going to talk in our session about creating VR and AR experiences using web technologies. In particular, we're going to see how the combination of BabylonJS and WebXR makes it really easy to create those immersive experiences. So let's get right into it. And let's start talking about the first component, which is BabylonJS here. If we pause for a minute and we think about AR and VR, the first thing that comes into mind, one of the first things at least, is 3D, right? And that's exactly where Babylon's come into place. It is a 3D rendering engine that sits on top of the WebGL layer, in the future also Web GPU. And that makes it much easier to create 3D experiences. It is not just a game engine, but not just a rendering engine, but a full feature game engine, right? So you'll find inside this API a lot of things like physics engine that have been integrated, animations, particle systems, all the good stuff that you'd expect in a state-of-the-art game engine on the web, right? Everything runs inside the browser. One of the key things also that is part of BabylonJS is the PBR, so physically based rendering, which is used in games, of course, but thinks also about e-commerce website and representing product in a very fine and realistic manner, right? Product configurators also on the web. All those are usage of BabylonJS. One key thing for the team is the notion of backward compatibility. When I was learning actually BabylonJS about a year ago, I just went online, looked up some old tutorials, I think they were like 3 years old, and to my surprise, this code that was 3 years old was working with the latest version. And we've all been stuck in those tutorials that don't work anymore, right? So this was for me the moment where I realized, oh, okay, it's really serious, the backward compatibility. And so that's something that is key for the team. And basically, you write your code, you will not have to go back on it again in the future, even if we keep updating all the time the engine. Another key thing is the support for this web format, the GLTF format for 3D objects. There is new extensions that comes all the time, and we work closely with the Kronos group to make sure to implement this into the Babylon engine. It's been used, it's pretty mature now, about 7 years old. You downloaded more than almost 3 million times on NPN. And of course, it is completely free and open source. Some of the things we have also on top of the rendering engine, the game engine itself, is a series of tools. Because we have in mind to make it really easy for you to go and create 3D experiences. So one of the first one that you see at the top right corner here is the playground, where on the one side, on the one hand, on the left, you have your code that you write in JavaScript, or it can also be in TypeScript. And you see on the right, because everything is rendered in the browser, you see in real time what's being rendered. Another tool is the inspector in the middle. So in the inspector, you're going to drag and drop a 3D object, a GLTF file, for instance, and you're going to be able, or scene, a full scene, and you're going to be able to debug it in some way. So look at all the bones, the animations, the materials, the texture. You're going to be able to drill down and see what's wrong, if anything is. We're adding more editors. So one of the last editor we added is the node material editor that you see at the bottom right corner there. Think about being able to create shaders without writing code, and instead by combining little nodes and connecting them together. That's something that is very useful and common for technical artists, for instance. And finally, we also very recently added a particle editor, and that's just in the line of us adding more and more tools around specific features to make it easy and faster to create applications, 3D applications. I mentioned open source a little bit before. There is a very strong community behind Babylon.js, and you wouldn't be here if there was not this huge community that is on a daily basis active on the forum. So that's where you can ask any question if you're blocked, usually in 24 hours or much less. You'll have your someone will be taking care of you and helping you. Some people of the core team or some of the broader community. There has been about 300 contributors since the beginning that contributed some pieces of the framework. So thanks to them, we're here today. And yeah, it's a 7 years old API. So a lot of commits since then, of course. Pretty mature engine. I want also to talk about one of the last project we are a big endeavor we've been having for some time, which is Babylon native. Let's pause for a minute and let's think of a dream we could have that is becoming a reality, where you could take your JavaScript code and reuse it in a native application. So I'm talking about the rendering part, right? That you would take, think about an e-commerce website, for instance, where you would take the rendering part for the 3D object, the 3D scene, and you'd be able to reuse this in your native mobile application, for instance. And this could work also for some games. So that's what's behind Babylon native project, which is available today in preview. It contains the full Babylon engine, so as we keep enhancing the engine and adding new capability, those will work also in the native applications. Recently, the team has been adding React Native, also a React Native integration to this Babylon native, so even if you can choose your UI technology in Babylon native, it can just be the whatever technology you have on a specific platform. You can also use React Native and have the same code again on the web and on your native application for the interface, for instance. And this is what's interesting is that it is bringing the fast iteration time you have usually on the web. It's bringing this fast iteration time also in the native application. And in some cases also it's allowing to have much smaller package sizes. All right, so we're all at home watching our screen. So I was thinking that we could put a little energy here with a trailer. That's a trailer of our latest version that was released in February, and that explains, shows a little bit what the new features. So this is a current version that you're gonna see. Let's go right into it. All right, so you saw all the energy, all the passion that is behind this Babylon.js engine. And again, I want to thank the whole community that is behind it and that keeps every day adding new features. Quite a few of them were just done by exclusively the community. Let's change topic. Of course, it's complementary in this session. We're going to talk now about WebXR and talk a little bit of, I'm going to give you a little bit of background about WebXR for those who don't have. So it's an open API to create mixed reality experiences. So it's actually both now for VR and AR. It's a continuation of an older web standard, WebVR, who has now been deprecated. What it brings is a cross-device. There is a community-driven controller repository which is going to allow basically a simple type of code that is going to be able to work across in an abstract manner across all the devices that are in this library. So it's very useful. The API is still stabilizing. The standard is still in draft, but it's pretty mature now. The previous one, WebVR, has been deprecated, really. So it's available in Chrome, in Edge, in Firefox, under Flag, in Oculus browser. So you can really use it now. Start using it now, testing it, using it, building first applications today to discover it. It is not yet supported on Safari and iOS. Hopefully it will be soon. All right, so that's for WebXR. Let's talk now about BabylonJS and WebXR. And as Hanan Weber, who is the person behind the integration of WebXR in BabylonJS, as he was doing this, he had some key principles in mind that I'm going to share here. First, as always, the goal is to make things easy, right? So you're gonna see, right, the minimum amount of code to do the maximum, right? So that's something very important. Things have to work the same across all the device. So there's a little asterisk here. It means, of course, it depends on the capability of the device, but as long as there is a common ground, things should work the same. Mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, the backward compatibility. So again, it's still here, and we'll see how this has been implemented a bit later on. Rapid development, the standard is still in draft, so every week, sometimes every day, there are some changes, and Hanan is keeping the code up to date. And finally, I mentioned simple at the beginning, but one of our other core principle is to be powerful. So there is always room for advanced developers to go deeper. The native objects for WebXR are exposed, so you can go deeper and customize everything. Again, we'll see this a bit later, more in detail. What is available today is basically the latest version of the spec is implemented most of the time, very regular updates. Supports both VR, so virtual reality, and augmented reality scenes. Mentioned this object that every WebXR object have a corresponding object in Babylon.js, and there is a dynamic button to enter and to enter and exit AR, so you can customize this here. One of the key things also is Hanan created a simple to use experience helper. So basically we'll see how in a single line of code you can enable WebXR, you can enable XR, basically a VR in your scene. We'll see this in a little demo, some demos I'll do at the end. Something else that is present is a feature manager. So think of it as a plugin system, right? That is make you pick and choose what feature you want to use of WebXR. So it's useful firstly for versioning. I was mentioning backward compatibility a little bit earlier. That's how it's implemented. So there is a module, let's say for the gaze or hand tracking, there is a module that is implementing today hand tracking. Well, in the future, if the draft is changing, there'll be another module, right? So that's how we can keep the old one always compatible, backward compatible. Another very good aspect of this feature manager that I was mentioning a little bit before is that as a developer, you may not want to use everything, right? So you're going to be able to load and use the features you want to use in your code. And finally, for those advanced developers, they can customize. So they can create their own plugins, and they can also actually contribute to this plugin system. User input. So there is a native support for the WebXR input profile library that I was mentioning at the beginning, with a fallback system depending on the capabilities of each device. There is a pointer selection feature for cross-device support, which means basically that with one single code, you're going to be able to select with the mouse, with the touch, with gaze, with controller, right? So if I take an example, a trigger on the controller is abstracted into a pointer event. So that's how it's allowing us to have just one single way to access this, to select, for instance. Gaze, you know how on some of the device there is no controller, so to be able to interact is just fixing, looking at an area for a specific moment of time. So this is there, it's called delay selection mode. The gaze and the hand tracking that is also coming is of course an input. Teleportation, very important in VR to avoid motion sickness. So that's how you can go from one point to another. So this has been implemented. There is all kind of advanced features there. You can rotate, you can move backward. You can also customize, not customize, you can enable some zone where people can, you want your user to land, right? You may want them to go just to specific places of your scene, not everywhere. And again, it is fully customizable. Physics. So this is not part of WebXR per se. That's something that has been added on top of it in its implementation in Babylon.js. And this is because with your hand, with the controllers, you're going to want to interact with the 3D scenes. So that's why we added this physics engine. So both the hands, the head are a physics object. So we can move and we can move object, we can hold object. Again, it's fully customizable, and there's a few demos. I'll go over some of them at the end of this video. Another part is the augmented reality AR. So it's supposed it's supported in HoloLens 2 with the Firefox reality browser. In terms of features, there is the heat testing, there is plane detection, you can see on the right here, and this is for now available just on Android. There is a feature manager, so they're available behind this feature manager that I was mentioning before, so you can just load some of those specific features. Right now they are behind a flag. And another feature is the background remover. Think about if you have a scene, if you have an experience that is being used both in AR and in VR. When you're going to be in AR, you're going to want to be able to see right the world around you. So there is some meshes, some 3D objects that you're going to want to hide when you are in VR, and that's what you can do with this background remover. The skybox typically, so what's around can be removed or not displayed. What's coming? In very short term is the first final version of the hand tracking that Hanan is working on. There is also still a few issues on our GitHub, so we're keeping working on this. Some teleportation improvements, some light estimations, and also Babylon native support of WebXR. As I was mentioning before, how with Babylon native you're going to be able to take your rendering code that you did for for the web and be able to use this also in your native applications. And of course you can just do a native application but using those web technology. So the team is implementing WebXR using OpenXR interface once it's available on the native platforms. And for iOS and for Android, because OpenXR isn't ready yet, they are using AR Core and ARKit. All right, a lot of talk, a lot of slides. Let's take some time to do some demos. I'm just gonna look if I have enough time. I do have enough time. So let's go right into the demos. I'm gonna switch here. and we're gonna start, and I'm gonna hide my face here. So this is a documentation. I just wanted to highlight that everything is documented. So you just go on Google and WebXR, Babylon.js, you're gonna land on this, and you're gonna find a lot of documentation, a lot of how-tos, a lot of examples for you to understand what is a WebXR, for you to start experimenting with it. See a lot of content, and in particular, you have a section with demo and with examples. So each little code here is actually an example, some basic ones, some more complex one. And I'm going to show you two examples. Let's start with the first one. So this one, let me start by explaining what you see on the screen first. So I was mentioning one of our tools, which is the playground. So on the left, you see the code. And on the right here, or in the middle actually, you see what's being rendered, right? So what the user is seeing. And this is in live, of course. Everything is in the browser. This scene is basically one big 3D scene inside a file. So this file is being loaded here. And I was mentioning the helper a little bit before in the presentation. You're gonna see that just with this line here, that's the only line that is needed to enable the immersive application. So because there is this line, which is basically enabling the session, doing the session, the WebXR session initialization, managing the input sources, the camera, teleportation, scene interaction. You can just go in immersive mode here. So I'm clicking here, and so you can understand on this right here, you see the developer tools. You see what is called the WebXR emulator, so that you can install as a plugin, and then you can emulate a device. And I pick up here Oculus. There is different devices that are available for you to test. And if I select the headset, so think that if it's like if I would be moving my head in the headset, and you're gonna see that the view is changing basically. So basically one line of code to enable, to transform, to make this scene actually a full VR experience in this case. Let's go to another example that involves physics. And that's a simple, quick demo that Hanan did about a goalkeeper. So let's sit back a little bit. You see the goal here, and imagine that I'm in front of this goal and that I'm gonna have some balls throw at me. And when I have a headset, I would be with the controllers, or with my head, I would be trying to block the balls coming. So again, I'm going to immersive mode here. You see the two controllers, and you see what I'm seeing with the headset. So I'm gonna unselect the headset here. And on the right controller, I'm gonna see it's pointing right now to the easy mode. So I'm gonna start the game. So balls are gonna come at me. And then I'm gonna pick this controller, and the goal is to be able to block some balls. And yeah, it's hard to talk. And okay, I got one. You see an example, right? So what you see here is physics, basically how the controller is interacting with the ball, and that's the goal of the example. So I can stop the game here. And if we look what it means in terms of code, we take some time to look at this. There is, again, not much lines written purely for the XR piece. So in this example, everything is created inside the code, so it's not like we're loading a scene. So the lights are being defined here, the environment, the shadow engine, the GUID, you see this little button where you can click. So all this is just a 3D experience written in code in Babylon.js here, directly into the playground. So nothing XR related in some ways. The XR really starts at this line here, with this line, one line where I'm calling the helper, where Ranan, who wrote this demo, is calling the helper and again, creating everything for you, right? So one line to create everything for you. It's not enough in these examples because remember, we want to interact, right, with the ball, so we need some physics there. So what it's doing is, here actually is just adding some shadows. So in the scene, if you look, there is a shadow of the controller, so it's adding the shadows. And then to actually call the physics, so how you can interact with the ball that are being thrown at you, is using the feature manager. Remember this plugin system where you can just pick and choose what feature of WebXR you want. So it's calling it here, instantiating it here, and then calling, getting the physics, enabling the physics. And that's pretty much it, because the rest of the code is inside the XR loop is the code for throwing the balls every 2 seconds. So that's not really XR related. And then that's it. So conclusion, pretty simple to write VR and AR application. We can do some other demo with AR another time. This concludes the demo. It also concludes our presentation. I hope you got all pumped up with the possibilities of those technology, and maybe you already have some ideas on how you can use this in your applications. I want to thank Hanan Weber, who created, was behind the integration of WebXR into Babylon.js, and also I want to say thank you for watching this video. We're going to be live in a Q&A, and I'm trying to find the right place here. Yeah, we're going to be live now in a Q&A to answer your questions. So Hanan is gonna join me right after this session. Bye now, and stay safe. Bye-bye.